Loosen up.
I'm out of practice.
That's the new
All right,
year.
yeah, Steve, turn that collar down. You look great.
There we go.
All right. Let's go.
Hi, and welcome back to This Week in Voice, Season 4, Episode 14. My name is Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of a company called Score Publishing based in Nashville, Tennessee. We are 1 week away from Project Voice, the #1 event for voice technology and AI in America, coming the week after CES. Amazon, Google, Samsung, Microsoft, Mercedes-Benz, Mayo Clinic, and mega utility EPB based in Chattanooga are all presenting sponsors of the show. We're expecting somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 attendees, possibly more from 20 plus countries coming to Chattanooga, Tennessee for Project Voice. It's going to be a landmark event for the space. We, as part of the show, have something called the Project Voice Awards Gala, which recognizes best-in-class achievement across the vast landscape of voice technology and AI. The Project Voice Awards Gala is sponsored by Google, with the cocktail hour beforehand being sponsored by Rain Agency. As part of the gala, we're really fortunate to have a band comprised of IT and technology consultants called the SIPtones come and play the show. And joining us on This Week in Voice today are the SIPtones. Guys, it's an honor to have you as part of the show, and I'm going to let each one of you introduce yourselves and tell us, tell me and the audience what you do. And John Arnold, I'll start with you. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Sure. Hey, thanks so much, Bradley. Really happy to be here, and we'll each tell our stories a little bit. So this is not the entire SIPtones band, but we're certainly the core players, and Rick Hathaway is kind of our fearless leader. He'll tell you a little bit more about that. I'll just mention myself a bit here. So I'm actually a technology analyst, and analysts are kind of close cousins to consultants. And we all are very closely aligned with trends in the business communication space. So we're very attuned to what's happening in voice, with video, collaboration technologies, et cetera. And I've been following this space about 15, 20 years. So we've seen these technologies come and go, peaks and valleys with what's happening with these things. So it's a very exciting time to be following voice. I'm with you on that 100%, Bradley. And music-wise, I play piano and guitar, primarily keyboards with the SIPtones. And yes, you'll hear lots from us during the whole thing on Wednesday night. So I'll stop there and we'll move on, and we'll get back to the tech topics in a few minutes.
Excellent. John, thank you very much for setting this time aside and being part of the show with us.
Oh, quickly, I'll just mention I'm based in Toronto. So Canada, I hope, is one of those 20 countries that I think are going to be pretty well represented at the show, huh?
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. We tried our best to prevent that, but we couldn't. So,
okay.
Of course, I'm teasing, but yeah, absolutely it is. John, thank you very much.
Okay.
Next up is Rick Hathaway. Rick, say hello, say what you do, and tell us who you are and what you spend your time doing professionally.
Good morning. And again, thank you for setting this up. We're looking forward to attending the event, looking forward to participating in the event. I'm an independent consultant. I deal mostly in the enterprise communication space. Typically what we do is we go out to end user enterprises, small, medium, and large, do the needs analysis, the business analysis of what communications requirements each individual organization has, and then advise them accordingly. Sometimes it's a case of optimizing what they have. Sometimes it's a case of needing replacements. And as independent consultants and members of the Society of Communication Technology Consulting Society, we don't take any finder's fees or commissions or residuals from any of the manufacturers. We work strictly as an independent consultant for the end user clients. So because of that, we can be that independent third party that goes in to take objective look at what business requirements are, write RFPs, be part of that evaluation selection process, to make sure that the technology fits the need. Because after all, technology is great. We're all in the technology field. I've been in it for over 40 years now. but technology is only a tool. And tools, I've always told clients, tools do two things to you. They do something for you and they do something to you. So it's our job to decide, what proper mix is the best fit for each different situation. I am based in Fairfax, Virginia, but like most independent consultants, we work wherever there's an airplane that'll take us. So I've had projects all over the country. I have visited Canada, but haven't had a project there yet. The SIPtones, just briefly, the SIPtones is a band that myself and another individual put together in 2007. That individual was a Canadian as well. There used to be a couple of different consulting societies, one based in the U.S., one based in Canada. We were closely associated for many years. We decided to perform a musical experiment along with the technical pieces that we do. We put the band together in 2007, and we've had quite a few personnel changes, but we have played, together for quite some time now. It's been a fun thing to do. We have representatives all over the country. We have representatives from California, New York, Philadelphia, Virginia. Again, it's a group of technology individuals that have proven to show that there is a life beyond technology. So I'll let you get back to the program and move on. If there's any other questions about that, we can discuss those as we go through the podcast.
Rick, thank you very much for joining us and giving us some of your time today. Next up, we got Steve Ledden, also the SIPtones. Steve, tell us who you are, what you do.
Great. Bradley, thanks for having us. And I'm very excited to be a part of this with you in the coming weeks. Yes, a couple of things about our firm. We're also very independent consultants, as Rick described. I'm actually the current executive vice president of the Society of Communications Technology Consultants, which again requires all of us to be ethical, independent, in our approach, to serving our client base. We also do, our focus is really mid to large enterprise clients. 500 million and up typically is the client base that we serve. Many of the clients that we're involved with are very contact center focused. We do everything from unified communications to the data communications network to the cabling infrastructure to the contact center. But we're finding the biggest focus these days is on this little word called customer experience, patient experience, member experience. And when we have these discussions and discoveries, as Rick was sharing, with those kinds of executive management teams, it's amazing how they really do want to focus on that, and they want to invest dollars and in technology in order to accommodate those trends that are taking place. Let me give you just two brief quotes that I just saw recently. In the year 2020, customer experience will overtake price and product as the key brand differentiator, which is from a Walker study. Another one, companies that excel at customer experience have 1.5 times more engaged employees than companies with poor customer experience, from the Techman Group. So it's quite interesting, Bradley, to see how, there's a big focus on this, but it's interesting how it plays back to the contact center, which is really the front line for, for this, member experience, patient experience, customer experience. So specific to healthcare, we're finding most of our customers really in need of new technology. Okay, they've been using Hunt groups and UCD groups and basic contact centers for quite a while. But when we start to share with them the new technologies that are out there, including AI very specifically, it's quite amazing how they're latching on to it. I was fortunate enough actually to be on a podcast about a month ago with one of the executives from Google, and we talked all about AI in the contact center. And we talked all about the idea how AI was going to really accommodate the number of full-time equivalents that we'll need in the contact center, both from a chatbot point of view as well as a voice bot point of view. Okay, and the analytics that will be coming in from Google and others will be pretty amazing in terms of guiding even the agents through specific prompts and answers that they can perform. So there's a lot happening in this space. So, I mean, just to sum it up, yes, I'm the drummer in the band of the SIPtones, and I'm very excited to be a part of all of you in the next coming weeks. And it's just an honor to be a part of this podcast. And I think, yes, like you were saying, voice is it's going to have a big change this year in 2020 with the bots and the technology that's going to be available. And yeah, voice will be now front and center, you know, which it was years ago. People thought it was going to die. You know, there were those, you know, naysayers that said it was going to die. Not. Okay, if anything, it has excelled. And now with AI, you know, attached to it, now we have players like Google and Amazon that are very centered on this space that we didn't see just a few years ago. So back to you, Bradley, and thanks for having us.
Steve, thank you very much for being part of the show with us. Thanks to all three of you. We're going to do this show a little bit differently. So we're talking on Monday, January the 6th, just as CES is kicking off. And there's going to be a lot of news coming out from CES about different things related to voice technology and AI, things that impact it directly, things that impact it indirectly. So we're not even going there. We'll touch on one story toward the end of the show. Really, what I want to start with asking y'all. And even before I get into it, I guess let's cover the music at Project Voice first. Let's talk about something fun first, and then we'll get into the business aspects afterward. What can we expect? What can the Project Voice attendee expect to see, or to hear from the SIPtones at the Project Voice Awards Gala? Talk, and Rick, I'll start with you, and then John and Steve, if you want to comment as well. Tell us about the type of music that you play and why you play it.
The SIPtones were started as a rock, rhythm, and blues group. We play mostly 60s and 70s pop, Motown, rhythm and blues music that frankly, that I played, when I was younger, when I was in high school and college. Some of the songs that people, consider oldies, I played when it was brand new. So we throw in new songs each time. Again, we've had quite a few personnel changes. Some of the members that coming in have been younger than myself. So yeah, we do throw in a few 80s every now and then a 90s song. But it was organized primarily around, again, the 60s rock, rhythm, and blues, strictly as an effort to have fun at conferences and to show people that, again, there is life after technology, life beyond technology. It's amazing sometimes the reception we get after we're on a technology panel, and later that same evening, people will look around and say, "Well, who are these guys?" And we're on stage, just rocking the place, and it's just an absolutely fun thing to do. We do have guest artists, including perhaps yourself, maybe.
Well, yeah. So, and I'm happy to reveal that here. I will definitely be taking the stage with you for one song. As people who listen to or watch the show, many of which know, the intro and outro music was taken from a piano instrumental album that I recorded back in 2004. When I was in between years of business school, recorded it out here where I live now in Franklin, Tennessee. And it's near and dear. I grew up classically trained pianist. The skills are a little rusty, or perhaps significantly rusty, but nothing that can't be dusted off. And I'm looking forward to doing that. But yeah, I want to give people just sort of a window into what to expect, because y'all play a pretty diverse set of music across 2 or 3 decades, and just some some classic stuff. That's what we're
well,
at.
It is. You can expect some Aretha Franklin, some Temptations, some Big Joe Turner rhythm and blues, again, it's a variety of music based on the variety of people that we brought into the group over the years.
Love it. Love it. Steve, John, any other comments on that?
Yeah, if I could, guys, Rick, why don't you talk a little bit about what you play? Because also the caliber of instruments you have are so vintage, you ain't going on a plane with those.
Yeah.
I think that's a draw in itself.
Well, yes, I'm the saxophone player. So I've, over the years, acquired some very vintage saxophones. Basically, the Cadillac of saxophones is the Selmer Mark VI. So I have two of those and another that's just one step down from that. They are so vintage that I don't travel with them. So I will be driving from Fairfax, Virginia to Chattanooga. These instruments are quite pricey. You can get them on eBay if you're willing to pay the price. But again, I've been playing for quite a long time, so it's fitting that I should have instruments that have been playing that are as old as I've been playing.
We're excited about it. It's definitely a punctuation mark on what's going to be an exciting show, and so wanted to give people sort of a window into what to expect. And Steve, did you have any comments on the music as well?
Sure, Bradley. Yeah, just to give you a couple of samples that I was writing down as we were thinking about this. So we introduced at our last conference a new song, Heart of Rock and Roll from Huey Lewis and the News. That's one. A lot of these are, familiar songs for just about everybody. I Feel Good, Pretty Woman, Get Ready, Soul Man, Jailhouse Rock, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Sweet Home Chicago. And if I am fortunate enough as the drummer, Rick's going to actually introduce me on two drum solos, one for Wipeout and then one for Caravan later on in the night. So we'll have a lot of fun from that point of view as well. So just to share with you a couple of those songs, you're getting a feel for, these are sing-along type, venues, if you will, and we'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, these are songs that everybody will know the words to.
Yeah,
that's great. And if they're 18 to 24 years old and they don't, then they can be quiet and learn.
Exactly.
You know what? They know them anyway because they're being piped through, the retail stores all the time anyway. So
yeah, they'll get introduced to a time where music was not awful.
Exactly. And we want people to dance, and they do. I did want to add one thing, Bradley, which is very cool, which is one of the reasons why I'm so glad we're doing this. When you and I met at Pete's event in the summer, we're both similar backgrounds, classically trained, playing music just for fun for a long, long time. And in tech, what I have found interesting, we're not professionals, right? But I have found that in the tech space, there's a lot of creative people. And every tech company, whenever we do a show at either a tech company that hosts us or an industry event, invariably the musicians come out of the woodwork. And every tech company or a team that works on tech, there's someone in there who plays guitar or keyboards or bass. And a lot of them have house bands, right? That they play at their own getaways and retreats. So we have no problem. Every show we'll get, NEC, Interactive Intelligence, they'll come out of the woodwork and they'll want to play with us. Oh, can we get up on, that's our hardest job, is actually vetting the people who want to get up and do a song with us, because sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're just karaoke singers,
Yeah, I can see
never.
Or they think they know the lyrics, but they don't.
This is something that for an event like Project Voice, with the sheer amount of content that'll be at the show, number one. Number two, the importance of what is being discussed. There's got to be opportunities to have some personality, some opportunities to have some something that's a little bit different speed. And so that's what this is. This whole event, not just the music part, the whole awards gala. And so because what is happening on the awards are the first half of it. Maybe I ought to say it's the first third of it. The second third of it is the roast of Brett Kinsella, which I'm looking forward to, and which will be entertaining. And then the last third of it will just be sort of the after party and y'all playing and people dancing or whatever, enjoying the music. And so, yeah, it's going to be a fun time, and we're excited to have you all involved. Let me shift gears a little bit here. And as y'all just described, you've been around technology a long time, and you've got a much more enterprise level view on things. You know, this show does predominantly focus on consumer angles because that's been, you know, about 80% of the growth in voice so far. As we were talking about before the show began, that's going to change, and that shift is already underway, but still mostly consumer, with enterprise just sort of getting going. I want to just take a moment, and Steve, I'm going to start with you, and then Rick, go to you, and then John, go to you. Voice technology right now. Number one, do you have it in your house? Number two, do you use it at your business? And, you know, implicit in that is just sort of your overall view on the technology, good, bad, ugly, whatever it may be. Hit us with it. Steve, fire away.
Sure. Thanks, Bradley. So, yes, we do have voice in our home. A lot of millennials, of course, have moved away from, you know, a landline, but we're still believers in it for E911 or whatever landline type purposes as backup. Okay. We've also seen over the years, obviously, email and chat taking over, you know, in front of voice as the mechanism to communicate, but that doesn't mean people aren't communicating on voice. It just means they're communicating more. So what we have found really is that where voice was kind of taking second place a couple of years ago, now, you know, the shift has gone from the word telephony or PBX, if you will, was the old adage. Now we're using words like unified communication. So the platform is not just voice and voicemail, it also includes the entire unified communication suite, such as collaboration, which we're on right now, as well as chat and you know, other mechanisms. So you know, that we find is quite interesting. And yes, we do have a cloud communication system in our office, and we are very big on using mobile devices everywhere, especially with we use not just chat. I'm sorry, we use forwarding / twinning of our cell phones, our mobile devices back to our landlines. So many times I'll get calls from vendors, prospects who are calling me. I answer the phone, I have a chat with them, but they don't really know that I'm on my mobile device. They really think that I'm in the office. So it does a couple of things. Number one, it does the fact that I'm connecting with them. Number two, though, they can't discover, as long as I'm using the app, they can't discover my cell phone and mobile device number, which, believe it or not, in healthcare and other key industries for executives, it's huge not to reveal your mobile device, as you can imagine. So yeah, these are exciting times for all of us, and I'll continue the conversation with you with some other thoughts as we go forward, Bradley.
Sure. Okay. Rick, your thoughts?
Steve opened a lot of doors for a lot of different topics in what he was saying there. Typically what I've seen is that the consumer electronics field is probably where most of the development initially takes place, to develop each of those pieces, again, those tools that are now being developed and evolving into enterprise space tools. Sure, we're on a video conference here, today. 10 years ago, probably wouldn't have been. Steve mentioned call centers, mobility. All of those are very key aspects that had their roots in consumer first, and then they evolved into business tools. You couldn't go to an enterprise now without doing an analysis of their business needs that didn't include some type of mobility, some type of cloud-based storage, cloud-based communications, communications that go beyond what you would normally use in a consumer environment in disaster recovery. You don't usually have too much concern about disaster recovery at home, but if you're doing a project in a hospital, or for instance in a city government that I'm working in now, each of these elements is a tool to help that enterprise maintain communications for their customer base, whether that customer base are patients in a hospital or first responders for fire or police protection in a municipal client base. Again, it's a question of not, is the technology being used, but how that technology is continually evolving, because it never sits still. There's always some new requirement, some new development that'll help an organization, an enterprise, do their job more efficiently, do it more reliably, have more diverse means of backup and disaster recovery. There's a lot of events happening recently with ransomware attacks, with entire city governments being taken out of service. Each of these tools, again, is an element in planning for those disasters, to get around them, to make sure that critical functions are maintained.
Cool. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And John, shifting to you, your thoughts on both what Steve and Rick have said, your thoughts personally on voice tech, your overall views.
Sure. Thanks, Bradley. Yeah. So everything we're talking about right now, guys, it's kind of a preview. The panel session that we're going to be exploring this is on the Wednesday at, I think it's 11:05, Bradley, conversational AI. And so for me as an analyst, what I look at in this space is the shift from conventional voice, which is basically person to person, phones primarily. But now we're getting to this person to machine or machine to person environment where Alexa and Google Assistant, these new applications, which are AI driven, are not about telephony at all. But we're using voice now to interact, to interface, to engage with a device of some kind, not necessarily a real person at the other end. That's an entirely different use case for voice. And in my work as an analyst, I've called this the new voice, because it presents in the business environment new forms of value, new use cases, new applications. Just that basic concept of a digital assistant on your desk. Now, any person, regardless of rank, has the equivalent of a personal secretary, which never happened in the analog world, where only executives had personal secretaries. So it's, now instead of, yes, we do our own calendaring and stuff, but here you just tell your voice assistant to do it, update my schedule, book this flight, make this appointment for me, et cetera, et cetera. And going the other way, of course, what AI is really great for is, this is just in-office productivity stuff, but it will alert you to reminders. Oh, Bradley, you have a meeting at 2:45. Is you okay? Are you okay? Or should I shift it? Do I need to notify people you're running late? All those little things, right, that kind of add up to lost productivity. That's why the business value of this stuff is really great. So at your event, what's really nice is the consumer focus is going to be the big story there, but it's really great for people there to get exposed to say, this technology in enterprise, in the workplace, and in the contact center has an entirely different kind of life. But yet, as Steve mentioned earlier, we're now seeing these same companies that our kids are living and dying by with Google and Amazon, they're becoming the new leaders in the enterprise communication space. If the legacy players don't mind their business, Avaya, Cisco, et cetera, there's a lot at stake. So it's a really interesting time on many levels, not just the technology, but what's happening in the marketplace, how buyers, IT guys have to make decisions about what technologies to ride with, how far to go with. Do you break away from your decades-old relationships with legacy vendors and try new ones? There's so much at stake here. And a lot of it's driven, of course, by demographics, right? Gen Y, Gen Z kind of coming in, digital natives. It's a whole new world. And that's what makes it so exciting, because they use technology so differently than the digital immigrants, as we're called.
If you ask your voice assistant, or if your voice assistant's talking to you and says, "Is you okay?" you'll know you're talking to Siri.
And it will deliberately, it will not tell you information if you're asking about a Google
Go-
product and vice versa.
Yeah, I guess also if it doesn't ask you anything, it just knows you're not okay, then you know you're dealing with Facebook. So, um,
A little scary sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, that's thank you, John. That was great. Great commentary all the way around. And you know, it's we've seen a couple of just as a final point on this, and I want to ask you about one of these CES stories, and then we'll call it a day. But we have seen the first inroads, some very interesting inroads to these mainstream voice assistants, causing the evolution of contact centers, call centers already. You know, with Google Duplex and what they've rolled out with that, that's going to have a pretty profound impact on you know, the way a call center works. And Steve, as you were alluding to earlier, like the data that's part of that, you know, like sentiment analysis, things like that. But interestingly, Amazon, and it was super quiet. We covered it on This Week in Voice, but it really, it was like a mouse squeaking. That's how much attention they gave to being able to call Audible's customer support through Alexa. And so you can say something like, Alexa, get me Audible customer support on whatever, you know, the Alexa app or whatever Alexa device you're using, and reach their customer support. And that's kind of wild. You know, that sounds sort of like, who cares? But when you really start to think about that, that's a really interesting experiment that they really haven't talked much about, other than simply saying you can do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, you know, call centers, contact centers, you know, that's definitely an area where I think the enterprise will be deeply impacted, as well as others. And yes, y'all will be touching on that on your panel, and we're appreciative of you for being part of Project Voice in that way as well. So as a final sort of thing to cover here, CES is this week. I'll be heading out there. I'll be part of Pete Erickson and Modev's Voice at CES one-day event that they're doing on Wednesday, January the 8th in the ARIA. I'll be speaking very briefly and giving out some copies of my book about Alexa skills to those in attendance. Gentlemen, the big story heading into CES is about Samsung Neon. There's other stories as well that are big stories heading into CES, some political in nature. We're going to sidestep those and just focus on Samsung Neon. You know, Samsung rolled this thing out real cryptically, this artificial human. They got questions on, is this a replacement for Bixby? They were real quick to say, no, it's not, something else. John, I'm going to start with you and then work back to Rick and Steve. What do you think when you see this Samsung Neon? Does it seem like a lot of fluff? Are you optimistic, cynical? What's your view?
I just think it's, you know, a continuation of what we're going to keep seeing more and more of. You know, all these big companies are going to keep trying to push the envelope. No one knows really what's going to stick, what's really going to work. So I think what you're seeing here, and this really, you know, it follows on the heels of, you know, like the Star Wars film that just came out, and all these kind of futuristic sci-fi kind of themes that are making AI kind of more and more, you know, part of the landscape in ways that it normalizes the way we interact. So we are, you know, I just think if I'm my kid's age and this is all you know, it starts to become pretty routine interacting with virtual actors, whether they are images or voice. Just quickly on Bixby, by the way, what we in the enterprise space don't really pay much attention to is we get all excited about, oh, look at all these, you Alexa's on the desk and start my meeting, Alexa, in the workplace. That's pretty good. It's not high level, but the penetration of those smart devices is peanuts compared to where Samsung's reach is. Samsung has over 1 billion connected devices, and that's what Bixby is capable of. So it just blows it out of the water where Google or Amazon are at right now. Now they're not an enterprise play, but the sheer numbers give them that kind of critical mass to keep pushing forward. So this Neon thing to me, I know it's a separate entity, or so we're told. It's kind of an extension of that, of saying, their kind of footprint is so vast that if they can get even a little bit of traction with this, it can make a very big impact in the marketplace. And that's pretty cool. And CES is obviously the place to do that. Whether we'll have that come into our workplace, soon, who knows? The closest thing I've seen, and you guys might remember this, is a few years ago when Cisco started pushing video. They had this thing called, their big solution was called telepresence. And it was literally a life-size image that you could have. And one of the demos that John Chambers did to show how powerful this technology was, he literally had a hologram appear on stage as if that hologram was interacting with him in real time. And so it starts to look like magic after a while, which is a little scary. But the last thing I want to just mention, yes, we're talking about voice, but with Neon, because it's an image, it's a virtual human, it also signifies the rise of video as an application. I think, Rick, you mentioned this earlier too. We couldn't have done this 10 years ago. But with today, we're on Zoom right now. Zoom was nowhere 2 years ago, and now they're practically running the world. Video is becoming just as important as voice, especially to the younger generation. So again, Samsung is experimenting here to see Bixby is mostly voice, which is okay, but visual imagery is just as powerful. So if you can make AI more lifelike and effective to engage that way, if that takes, we're going to see a lot of it. If it's a dud, it'll go away like a lot of other things that didn't get traction.
Completely agree. Rick, your thoughts?
My thoughts are similar to what John just said. Again, the technology itself, again, continues to evolve. We've been dealing with these kinds of things in an audio fashion and a telephony fashion for years, where actual humans, call center agents, would use databases to respond to incoming call inquiries and questions that evolved into the AI, which allowed faster response, faster access to data, to where AI is now evolving to where it can start to become predictive, to where it can start thinking about what you're going to say as opposed to reacting to what you did say. So it's almost to the point where they're experimenting with conversational artificial intelligence. Where this goes, it's a question of its utility in the enterprise space. How many customers will actually embrace the technology? It has to be simple. It has to be reliable. It has to answer a business question. It has to answer a business need in order for it to succeed long term. It's cool technology. It's another step in the evolution. I don't want to say I'm cynical about it, but I take more of a pragmatic view in that, again, it's a technology, I think, looking for a mission, and we'll see soon enough whether it finds one.
Yeah, well said. Steve, your thoughts?
Sure, Bradley, thanks. So, we're in a point in the customer service industry, again, where AI is going to focus, at least in our industry, first. Okay, and then, dovetail out into the entire administrative UC space as well, of course, as we go forward, as you've been sharing. But interestingly, we've been talking about omni-channel and multiple channels over the years. So between chat, voice, video, social media, interactions and integrations, those have all been, slowly been adopted. And, part of our mantra as a consulting firm is to say, if you're not touching all of the different channels that are available out there, including email, of course, is another one, you're just not staying current with the business. And the industry has evolved to a point where we're using tools such as speech analytics and text analytics for actually evaluating every conversation that again creates the data that the AI tool needs in order to create these predictive, types of responses. So it's quite interesting to see how we're seeing, obviously, whenever you're on a retail website now, you'll see a chatbot come up immediately, and the initial conversation will be a chatbot, and then it'll eventually either be transferred to an individual who's a specialist, or if the conversation is not overly specialized, it'll stay actually for the entire conversation with the chatbot. And how do you know you're really talking to a chatbot versus a real human being? Look at the response rate that you get from the chatbot. It's close to immediate. On a regular voice individual, or I should say chat with a live individual, you're talking responses of typically 30 seconds, even a couple of minutes, depending upon how many chat sessions that individual has open and available at any given time. So long story short, yeah, we're going to see video coming into play more and more. I apologize. I'm at the cabin with the dogs.
Oh, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. And, bottom line being that, you're going to see more of this, which Samsung is starting to prepare, especially as video now takes front and center stage. We have a very large healthcare client as one example, and it's starting to get a bit more common now. But in New York City, they have an agreement now with Walgreens, where in the more established neighborhoods, for $100, you can do a card swipe and have a one-on-one video consult with any other physician at this major hospital. Okay, big deal. It's a big deal. We're also going to be using video for chat for pre and post-op with patients, so they don't have to come into the office for a pre-op visit. They actually have that visit pre-op and then post-op with the physician, and there's a whole triaging effect that we're helping to create with the client, starting with a physician's assistant and then transferring that call with the patient's records over to the physician. So believe it or not, the physician will now become the highest paid contact center individual you've ever seen. But it's quite interesting to see how physicians are using these tools in order to really improve on the number of patient appointments that they can have in any given day. Believe it or not, insurance companies typically reimbursed, based on our research, an outpatient appointment at $540. So if I can add 15%, more in a single day, it's quite a bit more revenue. Now, again, not everybody's revenue driven per se, but it adds to the bottom line, which I think everybody is in a period, especially in healthcare, where we're looking to manage costs and manage revenues all together. So yeah, I think Samsung has something going on, and it's interesting. I'll just give you one use case here with a client that is actually doing all kinds of transactions in the commercial rental space. And they actually have a plan that in 2020, they're going to expand to, the goal is to take 30% of their call volume and push it into the AI space and help manage the number of staff that they're going to have. So, and again, AI sounds so brand new, but yet, we've been using interactive voice response, IVR, for years, where you would be doing touch tones and push buttons on, to go to an individual or to get your bank balance. This is now next generation of IVR, of course. So, so it's not brand new technology in that sense. People will adapt to it quickly. They'll enjoy it, especially if they're getting a better customer experience. And there's all kinds of KPIs and, SLAs that will, evolve out of this. One example, Bradley, of course, being that we get feedback everywhere now, right? When you go to a restaurant, it's a feed, can you please, let us know. When I call Delta Airlines, it's always a one question response, would you hire this individual, as an example, So, and then we get others that want feedback that ask for permissions to answer a couple of more questions. So feedback is critical, obviously, and that again plays back to the customer, patient, and member experience. So I think it's very exciting times that we're in. I think this is a great experiment, for lack of a better word, this early adopter stage with Neon, and we'll see where it goes. And to John's effect, if it takes hold, it'll be big, And we're also at this, I think, juncture, since we're in this early adopter stage. Those technologies or those companies that can make a name for themselves with something new, obviously get front and center in terms of news and all those other good things. So kudos to Samsung for announcing it, and we'll see how else the rest of this plays out as we go forward, Bradley.
No, that's great. Thanks to all three of you for your commentary on that. And you know, you see the words artificial human, and it reminds me of, and I can never remember the company name, but there was a company, and, you know, John, you mentioned holograms. There was a company that had hologram technology. I'll just call it loosely that, because it was that. I don't know what else to call it. And so they had the bright idea of creating a hologram of Tupac Shakur, the rapper.
Oh, right,
and,
right.
and taking that hologram to Coachella, where it was part of, I don't think,
Performance.
yeah, it's part of a performance. I forget whose performance it was. And people looked at that and thought, okay, you know, like you know, Coachella, those people are nuts anyway, you know, who cares? That's interesting. But then the same company took their technology and created a hologram of Michael Jackson. This is right after he passed away.
Wow.
And went to an awards thing, an awards show, and you could search on YouTube for Michael Jackson hologram, and you should do this. And it's funny because the cameras, they try not to show that much of this, but to read the accounts of the audience, Michael Jackson, this hologram, was performing this new song. Okay, so new song. Keep in mind he's deceased. New song, and previously unreleased song, and it's this hologram of Michael Jackson that's extremely lifelike. And so in the audience of this award show, there was people crying, people just sort of with this dumbfounded look on their face, like, excuse me. And then you know, it was a few months after that the company was sued out of business and they're gone. Yeah. So you know, holograms have a not exactly a sterling history. But you know, I feel like I have to throw that in there because I love that that entire episode. But Samsung, I think, is a bit smarter than whatever company that was. You know, I'm excited to see what they got up their sleeve.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and to your point, Bradley, sorry, the latest Star Wars movie has Carrie Fisher in a number of scenes, and that's all digital reproduction since she has passed on.
Great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no one's exactly 100% comfortable with that.
Yeah. This sets a whole other direction of conversation that I do at a talk I give at Enterprise Connect in Florida. And this whole idea of this technology is now getting so good. We've touched on it a little bit with fraud. It's so good, and digital natives don't know from the analog 3D world, tactile experiences, when everything is digital and virtual, and the difference is almost impossible to tell between what's real and what's virtual. We're setting ourselves up for so many forms of deception that, you know, you mentioned Google Duplex, Bradley. That's a prime example of technology can be used, you know, for good or for evil, and the bad guys are always a step ahead. And, you know, we start getting to things like robocalling now. There's so many, you know, negative outcomes that are unavoidable, and we have to be, I think, just more vigilant. We can't just embrace this new technology blindly and say, oh, it's good, it's better, it's progress. The good comes with the bad, and that's invariable with anything that changes. But this stuff now, it's getting so scary good, and people just don't know the difference, and they can't tell, like you say. I can go on and on. There's so many examples in every form, you know.
That's what, yeah, and that's why you got to have events like a Project Voice, where, you know, you're not afraid of somebody saying something negative, somebody articulating an opposing viewpoint, because at the end of the day, everybody's just as excited about this technology as everybody else. Everyone is hopeful and optimistic. It's now shifted into what is what does responsibility around this stuff look like, and I have no doubt that when Samsung announces this neon whatever this ends up being, that they will touch on that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being part of This Week in Voice. Thank you for sharing your perspective, not just with me, but the audience as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Bradley. Really appreciate having us on. Great. Looking forward to seeing you at the show.
Absolutely.
Good
Thanks,
luck
Brad.
at CES.
Appreciate that. For This Week in
See you
Voice.
next week.
Yeah, absolutely. See you next week. For season 4, episode 14 of This Week in Voice. Thank you for listening, watching if you're watching on YouTube. Until next time.